Okay, let's unpack this. So, imagine you're digging through maybe an old jewelry box.
Hmm.
You find some pieces, maybe stuff grandma gave you, or just things you bought ages ago, and you
Mhm.
think, I wonder what this is actually worth.
Right. That thought definitely crosses people's minds.
But then almost immediately comes the worry, right? Like, how do I sell this without getting, completely ripped off, getting lowballed?
That's a really common fear. And it's understandable. Selling gold, it can feel a bit opaque, can it?
Totally. Prices are all over the place, carats, purity. It's easy to feel like you're going in blind.
Exactly. You don't have the information you need to judge a fair offer.
Which is why we're doing this deep dive. We want you to feel confident, to know roughly what your gold is worth before you even think about selling.
Precisely. Today is all about empowering you with the know-how to test and assess your own gold right there at home.
And we're basing this whole discussion on one really practical source. It lays out the tools, the steps, everything you need.
Yeah, it's a fantastic guide. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Break
Mm.
down that process, the tests, the calculations from this source so you can understand your gold's value.
Giving you that knowledge edge.
Hmm. It's about knowing enough to protect yourself and make sure you're getting a fair shake, using methods that are actually quite accessible.
Okay, so let's jump into the guide's thinking. First big question, why bother? Why know this stuff before you even talk to a buyer? What's the main reason?
Well, it really comes down to basic economics, as the source points out. Buyers are running a business,
Naturally.
and, their offer might be quite a bit lower than the actual melt value of your gold. They have costs, they need profit.
Makes sense. And the guide makes a really critical point about the little stamps on jewelry, right? The carat marks.
Oh, absolutely crucial. That
Yeah.
stamps say 21K, it's not always spot on.
Really?
Yeah, the guy gives that exact example. It might be stamped 21K, but when you actually test it using the acid method, it might only prove out at like 18K, maybe 19K.
Huh. So the stamp is more like a suggestion.
Kind of. Or maybe what it was supposed to be. Knowing the true carat, the actual gold content you get from testing, that's fundamental. That directly impacts the value calculation. You just can't rely only on the stamp.
Okay, so if the stamp isn't the final word, how do you, at home, figure out the real carat and the weight? The guide says you need to assemble a home kit. Let's talk about what's in this kit.
Right, so you need a few specific things. First up, a jeweler's loop, for getting a close look.
Like a little magnifying glass.
Exactly. Then you need a set of testing solutions, the source list specific one.
Yeah, I saw that. Platinum, 22 karat, 18, 14, 10 karat, and even one for silver. So a range.
You need that range to narrow things down. And the source is clear. These are acids, mostly muriatic and nitric acid blends.
Okay, so corrosive stuff. Handle with care.
Definitely. Though the guide mentions they usually come in dropper bottles, which apparently makes them pretty easy and safe to handle if you're careful.
Good to know. What else?
You need a testing stone. It's usually a small, black, sort of slate-like stone.
Uh-huh.
That's where you'll actually do the acid test.
Okay.
And finally, a jeweler's scale. A digital one, usually, that measures in grams. Very sensitive.
Right, for the weight. Now, here's the part that I think will surprise people, based on this source anyway. The cost.
Ah, yeah. That was pretty eye-opening.
The guide says the person who wrote it got all of that, the loop, the full set of acid solutions, the stone, the digital scale, the whole setup, for just $20 on eBay.
20 bucks. I mean, that detail really changes things, doesn't it?
Completely.
It makes it seem so much more doable for the average person. It's not some high-cost, professional-only thing. For a really small investment, you get the tools to potentially avoid losing a lot more money.
Absolutely. It's an investment in being informed.
Okay, so you've got your $20 kit. Now, the important part, using it. Let's walk through testing the acid test. How does the guide say to do it?
Okay, so the first step is you take your gold item, your ring, your chain, whatever, and you rub it firmly on that testing stone. Just make a little mark.
Yeah, you want to leave a visible streak, like a little line of gold rubbed onto the stone surface.
Got it.
Then you grab your testing solutions. And there's a specific strategy here, according to the guide.
Which is?
You always start testing with an acid solution that's higher than what the piece is marked or what you suspect it is.
Higher. Okay, why is that?
It helps confirm the upper boundary. So if your piece is marked 21K, like in the source's example, you'd start by putting a drop of the 22K solution on that gold streak.
Okay, one drop of 22K acid on the 21K streak. Then what?
Then you watch closely. If the gold streak starts to dissolve or disappear or even just look like it's breaking apart under that drop of acid,
Uh-huh.
that means your gold is less pure than the carat of the acid you used. So in the example, the 22K acid dissolving the streak proves the gold isn't actually 22K.
Okay, so if it vanishes, you know it's lower than that acid's number. What's the next step then?
You wipe the stone clean,
Huh.
very thoroughly, make a fresh streak with your gold item, and then you try the next lowest acid solution.
So if 22K dissolved it, you'd try the 18K solution next.
Exactly. Drop the 18K solution onto the fresh streak. Now, if this time the gold streak stays put, it doesn't dissolve. It doesn't change appearance.
What does that mean?
That means your gold is at least the carat of that solution, or maybe even higher. So when the 18K solution didn't dissolve the streak from the 21K marked chain,
That confirmed it was truly at least 18K.
precisely, it didn't prove it was 21K on the dot, but it confirmed it was at least 18K, which fits with the 21K mark possibly being accurate or close to it. It passed the 18K test.
That's actually a clever process. You're using the different acid strengths to bracket the actual purity. Find the point where it resists the acid.
You got it. It's a process of elimination. And doing this test is so vital, as we said, because you can't just trust the stamp. This gives you the real deal on the carat.
Which you absolutely need for the next part, the value calculation. So test done, you know the carat, now you need the weight. Let's talk weighing your gold accurately. What's the process with that jeweler's scale?
Super simple, this part. Turn the scale on. Let it calibrate itself to 0. The guide stresses, don't touch the scale or the table while it's doing that.
Right, keep it steady.
Then, once it reads 0, just gently place your gold item on the scale's platform.
And I'll show the weight in grams. The example chain in the source weighed 24 grams.
Yep, 24 grams. That number, plus the carat you figured out from the acid test, those are the 2 key bits of info you need for the math.
All right, the moment of truth. Putting it all together. Calculating the estimated value. This is why you turn the carat and weight into an actual dollar figure, or close to it. Let's break down the math from the guide, using their numbers.
Okay, this calculation is really the heart of it. It lets you estimate the value based purely on the gold content. First thing you need is the current world spot price for gold.
Right, the market price. The guide mentions checking a site like Kitco.com and notes that this price changes constantly, like minute by minute.
Yeah, it fluctuates. So you need the price right now, or close to it. The example price used in the source was $1,181 per troy ounce.
Okay, $1,181 per troy ounce. But wait, the scale gives us grams. How does that work?
Good point. You need a conversion. The standard is there are 31.1 grams in 1 troy ounce.
31.1. Got it. So step 1 in the calculation.
Step 1. Calculate the spot price per gram for pure 24K gold. You take the price per troy ounce and divide by grams per troy ounce.
So using their example, $1,181 divided by 31.1 grams.
Exactly, which comes out to $37.97 per gram. That's the value of 1 gram of pure 24K gold at that moment.
Okay, $37.97 per gram for 24K. Step 2. Now adjust that price for your item's specific carat. The example was 21K.
Right. You take that 24K price per gram, $37.97, divided by 24 because there are 24 carats in pure gold.
To get the value of 1 carat gram.
Sort of, yeah. Then you multiply that result by your item's actual carat number. So $37.97 divided by 24 times 21.
Okay, let's see.
That calculation gives you $33.22 per gram. That's the spot market value for 1 gram of 21K gold at that time.
$33.22 per gram of 21K.
Makes sense. So step 3, calculate the total spot value for the whole piece. Simple multiplication now. Take the value per gram for your carat, $33.22, and multiply it by the total weight of your item in grams.
Which was 24 grams in the example. So $33.22, 24 grams.
Yep. And that gives you a total world spot value of $797.45 for that 21K chain.
Okay, $797.45. That sounds pretty good.
But, and this is super important, the guide really hammers this home. That $797.45 is the theoretical maximum value based on the world spot price. It is not what a buyer will actually pay you.
Ah, right, because the buyer needs their cut.
Exactly. They have business costs, melting costs, assaying fees, maybe hedging against price drops, and yes, their profit margin.
So how much less are we talking, typically?
The source suggests that for smaller amounts of gold, buyers often pay somewhere between 70% and 90% of that calculated spot value. Yep. So they keep between 10% and 30%.
Okay, 70 to 90% of the spot value, maybe more towards 90% if you have a lot of gold.
That's what the guide implies, yeah. More volume might get you a slightly better percentage.
Yeah. So step 4 is applying that percentage to estimate your actual payout. The guide uses 90% for its final example calculation.
Right. So you take that total spot value, $797.45, and multiply it by the percentage you expect to receive, say 0.90 for 90%.
$797.45 times Bickel 90.
Gives you an estimated payout of $717.71.
So $770.71.
And that figure, the $717.71, that's the number you should have in mind. That whole process, getting the spot price, calculating value per gram for your carat, finding the total spot value, and then adjusting for the buyer's percentage, that gives you a realistic baseline.
It's your benchmark number before you even walk in the door or mail anything off.
Exactly. That is the real power here.
So we've really walked through it now, the whole process from the source.
Yeah.
Using the acid kit to verify the real carat, using the scale for accurate weight, and then doing that step-by-step math to get a solid estimate of what you might actually get paid.
And just having those tools, knowing how to use them, following these steps, it completely changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
You're not just relying on the buyer's word anymore. You've done your homework. You understand the value based on actual data and testing.
He gives you knowledge, and that knowledge is your best defense against getting a bad deal. You know what a fair offer should look like, roughly.
It provides genuine confidence.
So here's something to think about as we wrap up. Now that you know how to figure out the actual melt value, the pure metal value of your gold, does that change how you feel about selling older pieces? Especially items that might have, sentimental value attached, or maybe even some historical significance beyond just the gold content. Knowing the raw material value, how does that weigh against those other factors for you? Something to ponder for your own treasures.